Hi, thanks very much for watching. Today I want to talk to you about cover letters. Now, cover letters are a very important part of the job application process, and I want to share with you 3 tips for writing an interview-winning cover letter. Now, as a recruitment consultant myself, these are things that always impress me when I'm reading and reviewing cover letters and job applications. And look, despite what you may hear or read elsewhere, cover letters most certainly do get read, and often they can in fact be the difference between you getting an interview and getting a rejection letter in the mail. And look, cover letters should always do more or be more than just a few paragraphs of cliches stating the bleeding obvious. Now, an example of this would be a cover letter that is perhaps, Dear John Smith, it's with great pleasure that I submit my resume for your consideration for your advertised position, which I saw on this date for this position. I believe I have the skills, attitudes, behaviours and experience for this position, and I look forward to hearing from you for an interview. Blah, 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 blah. Look, this is something, this is a theme that we see quite often with cover letters. Typically it's just going to be a standard template letter that someone's using. Look, not that effective. If you're going to write a cover letter, actually take the time to write a cover letter. And just finally, cover letters, resumes and job applications are all in general intended to help you book an interview. You're not going to get a job directly after sending through your resume and cover letter. It's just not going to happen. If you send out your resume to a business or to a person that you've never met before, don't know anything about them, and they come back straight away offering you a job, you might be very happy, but at the same time you'd also be a little bit skeptical if they didn't even want to meet you before just offering you the job. So that should give you a bit of a hint as to how you should focus your cover letter and your resume in terms of its content and what you're actually trying to achieve. So without any further delay, let's go on to our first tip. For the first tip, I've phrased this as a question, and it is, are you helping the reader with their problem? Now, this might seem a little bit strange, but anybody that writes a job advertisement or is looking for staff, be it a recruiter, an employer, whatever, they have a problem that they need solved, because they wouldn't be advertising a position, they wouldn't be looking to hire somebody if they didn't have a need in their business for somebody of a specific set of skills. So it's really important that you identify what it actually is that the employer is looking for, and that you demonstrate in your cover letter that you can actually meet their requirements. So essentially what you bring to the table is going to be beneficial to them. It's really interesting because in a lot of the cover letters that I see, applicants never really take the time to specifically address what they're bringing to the table to solve the employer's problem, and it really is a missed opportunity, because what you're able to do when you do this is you're able to connect straight away with the employer. So you're creating that, I suppose, that relevant bridge. So they'll say, oh, okay, so this person can bring this to the table. This is somebody that we want to talk to. We're going to interview them, rather than talking about skills and experience that, whilst impressive, isn't necessarily at the core root of what the employer's problem actually is. And look, as I sort of mentioned in the intro, I mean, the majority of cover letters out there are incredibly basic and give no real information to the reader. And again, it is an absolute missed opportunity to stand out from your competitors. So that's all very well and good, but how can you actually go about demonstrating that you're able to solve the employer's problem? Well, the good news is that your resume, if it's well written, will do most of the heavy lifting for you here. But you want your cover letter to also give an incentive for the reader to want to go on and read your resume. And you can do this by focusing on telling the reader about your experience and skills that are only relevant to their needs, from the job ad or position description, etc. So no waxing lyrical about irrelevant skills and experience, because whilst it might be good for extra credit, it's not going to get to the heart of what the employer is actually looking for. And wherever possible, you should back up your relevant skills and experience with results. So in your cover letter, you might have a statement that sounds similar to, in my current role at XYZ Widgets, I relationship manage 30% of the business's client base and have increased my portfolio's revenue by 40% in the past 12 months, resulting in an additional $130,000 of gross revenue. So you've been able to say what you do, what you're actually being able to achieve, and that's always going to be something that a potential employer is going to look favourably upon, especially if it means that you're bringing in more money. So it's a very simple way of being able to demonstrate how you can actually add value, and by referencing what exactly it is that the employer is looking for their next employee. The second tip that I want to share is that you should show that you've done some research before sending through your application. This is especially relevant if you're applying for a role with an employer directly. So you should also always do some research before applying. Now, if you're applying for a role with a headhunter or a recruiter, this is probably not going to be as useful to you simply because you're not likely to know who the actual employer is. Recruiters and headhunters tend to keep that to themselves until the interview stage. But demonstrating that you have done some homework can highlight you as a serious candidate for the position. Employers know that you're going to be applying for multiple roles if you're looking for work. That's a given. But if you can actually show that you've taken the time to actually learn a little bit about them before sending through your application, it's always going to hold you in good stead. But like anything, try to balance it. And you should focus on why you want to work for this specific company rather than their competitors. And one tip that I have that I always suggest when writing cover letters is try to mention the company by name somewhere in the middle of your letter, because this will almost certainly draw the reader's attention. Now, I'm not talking about every paragraph you should mention the company name, but just in a couple of passages, just here or there, will help the letter actually stand out as being a standalone letter as opposed to a template that's just being sent to every employer that this person's applying for. So you might want a statement that shows you've done a little bit of homework, such as, before writing this letter, I wanted to learn more about XYZ widgets, and from my research was incredibly impressed with the number of positive customer reviews I found online, as well as with the business being recently certified as carbon neutral. And this is effectively a statement that says, well, I want to work for your company because you are a company that has been recognised by your customers as providing great service, as well as being certified as carbon neutral. You're potentially lining up with my core values as well. So it's a good way to, I suppose, to sort of highlight to that potential employer that again, you're very much on the same wavelength as what they are. So let's move on to our third tip. The third and final tip I want to share with you is something that to me is an absolute no-brainer, but I suppose at the same time it's an easy mistake to make, and a lot of people make it on their resumes and job applications, and that is, if you're using a template, make sure you update it. There is absolutely nothing more off-putting than a cover letter that has been, for example, addressed to the wrong person, has an incorrect subject line, has the wrong date on it. There is nothing more off-putting than that. And look, recruiters and employers are not just reading what you write, they're often forming a preliminary assessment of soft skills such as attention to detail. So it is really, really important that you make sure that you get rid of all of the errors from your cover letter and from your resume. And look, I mentioned before applications that I get that are often addressed to the wrong recruitment agency or have incorrect dates, that sort of thing. Applications like that I receive, as I said, for other recruitment agencies or employers, are almost instantly discarded. And that includes with a lot of spelling mistakes and typos as well, because referring to the first bullet point, has your attention to detail. Now, your attention to detail in your workplace is probably spot on, but if I've got 100 job applications sitting in front of me, and I've got 20 that have got spelling mistakes and typos and have been addressed to the wrong people, and I've got 80 that are actually really strong applications that have no mistakes on them and are really going to be, have the potential for being a good candidates, well, who do you think I'm going to eliminate from the process first? And every other recruiter and employer will probably tell you much the same thing. So it is really, really important, if you want your job search to be as quick as possible, that you make sure that you eliminate all of the errors from your documents. So here are some really, really simple ways to help you identify and remove mistakes from your cover letter. And the first is a really handy trick that I use on just about everything that I do and every document I prepare. And it's to proofread the letter once, fix any mistakes that you find and make any changes that you feel are needed. Do something else for an hour or two at the very least. So go and get some fresh air, work on something else, do whatever. and then come back and reread your cover letter. You might actually be surprised at what you find when you do this. You probably find that there will be some more things that need changing, and the reason for that is by going away and doing something else for a little while, you're actually allowing your brain to disengage from the writing process. So when you come back, you'll come back with a lot more of a, I suppose, a critical mindset as far as being able to go through and read with a fresh mind what you've actually written. You'll be more objective as a result. So it can be a really useful trick, not just for cover letters, but for any other documents you might be preparing in the workplace as well. Another tip is to ask a friend or family member to proofread your cover letter for you. It's amazing, again, sort of almost talking about the point above, but it's amazing the difference that some fresh eyes can actually make. And the final tip is to save as and save often. And remember what I was talking about where people will send out cover letters that will be addressed to the wrong person or have incorrect dates and things like that? Well, a common reason for this can be that they've not actually saved their letter. They've just typed over the top of another letter, not hit save, closed the document, and then attached the old unedited version of that letter to the job application and hit send. So make sure that you save as, so you save it as a different file, and then you keep saving and you attach that specific file to your job application. Now, I know this one sounds really, really easy, but it is something that a lot of people do make mistakes with. So just make sure that you save as and save often. Thanks very much for watching, and I do appreciate you getting this far into the video. I do know that this one feels a bit like a death by PowerPoint, as there's not a lot of visuals to it apart from the text, but I do appreciate you watching, and just remember that your cover letter can be so much more than a basic letter to introduce your resume. It can actually form a much more important part of the application process. And you can do this by giving the reader an enticing statement about how you can solve their problem. And whenever you're applying directly to an employer, make sure you please do some research on the business and make a statement that shows the reader that you've done your homework before sending in that job application. And of course, remember to check your letter very closely for errors. So thanks again for watching. I hope you've liked the video. If you have, please click like down below, and also be sure to subscribe to this channel for upcoming videos. Thanks very much for watching once more, and I'll see you next time.